What's up, Guardians, and welcome back to another Destiny weapon review. In this video, we're going to take a look at the Boolean Gemini. This is an exotic scout rifle that came with the TTK, and it's one that I was really highly anticipating getting my hands on. My hype levels were high, my hopes and expectations for this weapon were high, and TLDR, essentially, I'm a little bit let down. So this is a weapon that the reason why my hype levels were high for it was because it has so much character. I mean, I look at it, and the design team really did a solid job with this weapon. They made you want it. Because just looking at it, it's a beautiful scout rifle. The color scheme, the paint job, everything on it looks highly appealing, looks very unique. Also not just the aesthetic appeal of it, but even the sound that it makes when you fire off projectiles with this thing is very unique. The color of the projectiles with that sort of purplish blue, it's a great weapon in terms of the way that it looks and the appeal that it has, but in terms of how it practically plays out, I'm more than a little bit let down, honestly. This is a weapon that, for an exotic, I'm going to go ahead and say that I'd probably take 90% of legendary scout rifles over this one in terms of how they practically play out. It's just really not, frankly, worth the exotic slot. Now, let's get into the stats and everything about this weapon a little bit, and we'll sort of break it down, and you can see why I feel the way that I do about it. Essentially, this is a scout rifle that falls into the same archetype as something like Not Like the Others. It has the same rate of fire, same impact, almost roughly the same impact. It's going to do 41 to the body, it's going to do 61 to the head. But the catch is that obviously you have to land those shots, and that's where the Gemini kind of lets me down. So let's look at the weapon. Here you have it. In terms of the ballistic options, I highly recommend you run with smooth ballistics if you're going to use this weapon. You really want to stack anything that's going to increase the stability. You have unflinching, which is nice. You also have hammer forged, single point sling, and perfect balance, which is the obvious choice in the middle tree, in my opinion. You have one way or the other, and these are interesting, and they had my hopes up. But neither of them really make as much of a difference as I'd like them to make in PvP. Now, you can definitely tell a difference in PvE, but not so much in PvP, and obviously the Crucible is where I live and breathe. So, the downsides of this weapon. First and foremost, looking down the sights, as you can see right here, there are two things that are weird. You have stacked sights, essentially. You have one, the hollow sight, which isn't an altogether bad sight, but then you also have these iron sights on the tip of the weapon. And so that's what's weird, is that you have two sights stacked on top of each other, and obviously when you put two sights on top of each other, it's going to obstruct your field of vision. That's a problem to me. I want to be able to see a very clear sight picture. It's going to up your awareness. It's also going to help you land more precision shots, which is a big deal with this weapon, as is with any scout rifle. But especially if you're using the one-way perk on this weapon, landing precision shots is kind of important, so you can get that agility buff, which is kind of negligible. But that's neither here nor there. So the obstruction of the sights is just kind of weird. I want my sight picture to be clear. But on top of that, as if that weren't enough, on top of that, this weapon has some strange and significant recoil. That's why you have to kind of waste your ballistic and center skill tree options all on stability, so that it doesn't bounce as much. So here's the thing, if you're going to use this weapon well, you need to really not fire it at its full potential. Don't just spam the trigger and shoot it as fast as it'll fire, because the problem is you're not going to land half your shots that way. What you're going to need to do is either learn how to manually pull those sights back down, which is a pretty difficult thing to master, especially if you're using multiple different weapons in the game and you switch primaries around. Then getting into a groove with this weapon is going to be really difficult if you're manually pulling those sights back down. So what I recommend you do is that if you want to be accurate, what you need to do is kind of wait for those sights to recenter before you pull the trigger again. In other words, don't let the rate of fire of the weapon, the potential rate of fire, dictate how fast you shoot. You control the pace. Don't let the weapon control the pace of the firefight for you. So you need to be the master of the gun, not the other way around. So ultimately, the reason why I find this weapon underwhelming is basically because landing shots isn't as easy as it should be with a scout rifle, between the obstruction of the sights and the incredible recoil. So there's a lot that you're going to have to do in order to make the weapon as effective as you want it to be. Now, I polled some people on Twitter before posting the review, and it's good to know that I'm not crazy. A lot of people have the same feeling about this weapon as I do, but then there are, of course, those outliers. Some people say this gun just works for them. I really hope that's the case for you. I hope you click with this weapon. I hope it treats you well. But this weapon and I just don't have a decent relationship. It's alright. In fact, I did have one game where I went 28-0, unbroken. We ran out of medals, and that was a fun game that I had with it. But the sad thing is, after playing with it for a couple of straight days, I only had one match that I felt really, really good about, and that was that one. The others were just mediocre at best. I felt like I would have been more comfortable using my Not Like the Others or my Last Extremity, or especially the Taylock, or even a Jade Rabbit. But that's just my opinion. I think in order to get this weapon as good as I'd like it to be, two things would have to happen. First and foremost, they'd have to take the iron sights off the tip of the gun, and then in addition to that, they'd have to make the agility perk much more noticeable in PvP, and I would say just take the stacking away, because you're not going to get stacked precision kills very frequently, so you're not really going to get the full effect of the agility buff. So just make it a better agility buff that only procs one time for 12 seconds instead of stacking. That's my opinion, for whatever it's worth. Hope you guys get your hands on this gun, and let me know what your thoughts are. We'll catch you later, Guardians.